For a moment, this brand looked unstoppable. 100,000 orders in just 24 hours. Yet, strangest of all was the design. A glass back with over 900 LEDs, a minimalist OS, and it was half the price of an iPhone. Fans loved it and thought it was the next big thing. People called it the iPhone of Androids. But within 2 years, fans turned on it completely, calling it a scam, a sellout, and a failure. So what really happened to Nothing? First of all, what the heck even is this brand? Why the name Nothing? Well, our story starts with Carl Pei, an entrepreneur from Sweden. If you know that name, it's probably from another phone company he started, OnePlus. High-spec phones for low cost. OnePlus was doing very well, growing 163% in 2020, even in a year when the phone market shrunk 15%. But Carl did something unexpected. He left his own company. He said, "OnePlus has been my singular focus for the last 7 years. I'm looking forward to taking some time off to decompress and then follow my heart onto what's next." Carl quickly began working on something new. He got investor backing, including Steve Huffman, the CEO and founder of Reddit, and even Casey Neistat. So what was next? It was another phone company. But this wouldn't be another OnePlus. And it wasn't just phones either. He founded a brand new company in October 2020 called Nothing, a brand all about simple, minimalist products. Less is more, hence the name Nothing. Carl wanted to change the phone industry. He explained, "If you copy Apple, your design will also be very easily identified to that period in time. We want to create a more timeless design language by moving away from Apple and creating consistency." So in March 2022, Nothing unveiled their Phone 1, a mid-range Android phone, but with a very different look. The most notable is the clear glass back, showing different components and bright LEDs. I actually really like this design. Their phones, headphones, and earphones all remind you of that clear design trend from the 90s, which many people are nostalgic for. But it's not just the clear back. The idea of Nothing was to make a more accessible phone that also doesn't try and keep you on your phone 24/7. So, the back features over 900 programmable LEDs, which have unique pulses for notifications, ringtones, a great camera fill light, and even your phone's charge level. It's definitely a gimmick, and it looks wild and out there. But that's exactly the point. As a new company in such an old market with some very dominant players, you have to grab people's attention. And it's hard to do that with a product that looks exactly like the rest. Inside the phone, it had a custom Nothing OS built on Android, which looks fantastic. But the most important detail, the price, £399. At the time, less than $500, about half the price of the iPhone 13. It had cheaper components to be clear, but it looked and felt premium. Yet, part of its success came from Carl himself. Carl had quite a bit of clout from OnePlus, and to build hype, he teased specs and features on X and Reddit. People really believed Nothing was the next big thing and wanted in. In just 2 days, the Nothing phone had 100,000 people on the wait list. Then, the phone came out, and that momentum continued. 2 years later, Nothing 2 was dropped, and it had 100,000 sales in just half the time, 24 hours. Unbelievable for a new company. They had small market share, but they were rising fast. Everything seemed to be going great, but in reality, people were beginning to notice some quirks. The phones were awesome for the most part, but things slowly started to go off track. Nothing soon got a lot of attention for all the wrong reasons. One of the main factors driving Nothing's success is design and user experience. Better design means better retention. Nothing 2 was much like Nothing 1. The same design, better performance, small quality of life improvements. People loved the iconic, weird, and bold design. This felt like something different. But the problems arose when Phone 3 was revealed. First, the design was overhauled and fans were not happy. The original design was gone. The cameras were moved to strange asymmetrical positions. The LEDs were removed and replaced with the glyph matrix, a small circular screen you could load with the different designs. People gradually began to warm up to this design, but what they didn't warm up to was the price. This was supposedly Nothing's flagship phone. That might sound like a buzzword, but in the tech industry, that word means the best we can offer. It meant competing with the iPhone Pro, Galaxy Ultra, or Pixel Pro. Sounds fine, but for fans, this was signaling a problem. Nothing was moving from mid-range to premium, and we need to look no further than the price. The Phone 3 starting price with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage was $799, or £799. And for $899, you could get 16 gigabytes of RAM and 500 gigabytes of storage. That's a big price jump. It was now squarely in iPhone territory, and fans were not happy. They felt that it was a betrayal of the original idea, a mid-range, good value phone. Also, at that price, the specs were somewhat underwhelming. It had a Snapdragon 8 S Gen 4 chip, which is used by other phones like the Poco F7 for around $470. It had 50 megapixel cameras on both the back and the front, but in practice they were just okay, especially in low light. To be clear, it was still a really good phone, but you were essentially paying near flagship money for mid-tier internal specs. Carl responded directly to these reviews on YouTube, a lot of them. But there was still a problem. Many criticisms were deflected, not addressed, with Carl saying they're just a startup and that some people like the product and that it's not for everyone. The defense was essentially, we're different, so it's fine. But Carl seemed to misunderstand or ignore why people were actually frustrated. Carl doesn't realize that he is not competing against Nothing Phone 2. He is competing against the actual flagships. I do get where Carl's coming from, because a phone like Nothing is more than just specs. There's the design, the Nothing UI, and the general brand feel. With the price of the Phone 3 though, that brand was doing a lot of heavy lifting, and fans weren't buying it. The backlash was real, yet somehow that's not even the worst of it. In November 2023, Nothing launched Nothing Chats, private end-to-end encrypted text between Android and iMessage. Sounds great. So, what's the issue? Developers did some digging and found some big flaws. First, in order to use Nothing Chats, you had to use your iCloud login. Then, a developer, Dylan Roussel, did some digging and found that messages were sent in plain text to Sentry, a bug reporting platform, and stored unsecured on Firebase. Sunbird, the app developer, had access to every single message, but it got worse. Anyone with the right expertise could access these messages since there wasn't any form of actual end-to-end encryption, despite Nothing claiming it did. The app was quickly pulled from the App Store, but this was just the tip of the iceberg. Nothing had a bunch of strange ideas which were, to put it bluntly, poorly thought out. The Nothing 3 and 3A launched with Essential Space. This was an AI-powered vault and was a key selling point of the phones. It organized screenshots, voice notes, reminders, and more with an essential key. Sounds great. So, what's the issue? Well, customers quickly learned that it wasn't really a feature of the phone. Instead, it was an extra service with a bigger price tag. People also quickly noticed monthly limits on storage. Some users did some digging and found some code mentioning claim-free trial and a claim price $120. This was marketed as a main feature of the phone. Yet, secretly, it seemed to be a subscription service. Customers were becoming more and more frustrated. Fans were also noticing something else. Nothing was slowly changing, from an open, mid-range, value-driven phone company to something else entirely. One customer said, "The company has changed its ways since their success in the phone market. Not the old, enthusiastic, customer-oriented company anymore. People were calling this a walled garden. Nice features, but behind expensive software, products, and subscriptions. This was looking like the same ecosystem mode Apple has. With Apple, however, you buy into that idea from the beginning. Nothing seems to be moving away from its initial pitch. Good value, openness, minimalism, and a bit of rebellion to exclusivity, and a walled garden. So, how is Nothing doing? Well, on the surface, Nothing seems to be doing well. In 2024, Nothing was the fastest growing smartphone brand with a 567% increase year over year. As of July 2025, the company has passed $1.5 billion in total revenue. But even with that revenue, they're still not quite self-sufficient, let alone profitable. In 2023, they raised $100 million. And now, in 2025, they're trying to do it again. In total, they have 7 million device sales to date and are now shipping 1 million a quarter. Very impressive. But Samsung, by comparison, is shipping 57 million. Of course, Samsung is a titan and Nothing is a startup, but it shows the scale of their competition. Nothing has about 0.2% of the total market. And with the controversies of the Phone 3, they need all the help they can get.